Welcome back to the Paddle and Fin Podcast Network. We're brought to you by Yak Gadgets. For all your fine quality kayak fishing accessories, go to yakgadget.com. Pelican cases, cooler, and lighter. Go to pelican.com. And the 153 Bait Company. For all your hard and soft bait needs, go to the 153angler.com. Now let's join our special guest around the campfire. Welcome back, everyone. Your host, Brad Hurlebaus, another episode of Feather and Fur here. And tonight we have on Ryan Potter, so we're going to just get right to it. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a fun little challenge getting this going with some computer issues and a couple other things, but we finally got it worked out. So, I kind of feel like we got all the technical stuff out of the way, so the show should just go really well, right?
Don't say that, you jinxed it.
I jinxed it last night. It was all on me because I tried to record with two guests, and only leaving a 40-minute window, and I just don't do that because I know, karma's there, and it's like, you're trying too hard now. You got to take it back a notch.
Yeah, like I said, last time I did one with my buddy Aaron, it was the same thing. It was an hour of technical difficulty, so probably our fault for not going over that first.
That's all right. We're here now. Everything's good. It's winter. It's cold. It's I don't know if it got above zero here, and you're north of me, so.
Yeah, it's this morning I went to work. It was -1, and then by the time I got home, I think it was about 16. So yeah, it wasn't warm at all. But we really haven't had a lot of cold weather up here the last couple weeks. We've been pretty fortunate.
You were actually warmer than me. I went to work. It was -16.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, she was brutal. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning. I was on a work meeting, and they're like, "How's the weather by you?" I'm like, -7. And they're like, "What's negative?" Yeah, negative.
Yeah. I walked out. There wasn't a temperature. It was 0. But yeah, it warmed up. Sun was out, so I thought for a while it was going to snow, but mostly sunny skies today.
Nice. Then, so might as well just get right into it. I like to start off everything with this. How did you get into hunting? Was it a family tradition that you kind of molded into? Late onset, you're like, you know what? I want to do this, and you just dove right in head first?
No, I mean, it was a family tradition. My dad had a family of 12 siblings, so 7 brothers, the rest sisters, and they all hunted together. And I can remember even as a kid, I think as early as 6 or 7, I was up north with my dad, started squirrel hunting, rabbit hunting, and then we got into deer hunting. So yeah, it's been in my blood. My brother and sister never got into it, but I went full-fledged, man. I've done everything really except trapping. Sure.
Trapping's a whole nother world. I don't have any experience in that, and I'll be honest, nope. I don't have the time to check trap lines every day. I'm too busy.
Right, and especially with me in southern Michigan, if I was going to start, it would be a lot to get into that, and I would have to spend some time up north, or some farm fields down here to get some farms that I actually coyote hunt. But like you said, you have to check them every day, so I don't have that kind of time this time of year.
I give all the credit to the people that can do it. That's some dedication that I just don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to some people today about checking trap lines up in Minnesota. It was 20 degrees or -20, and they're out there at 6 in the morning on a snowmobile checking traps. I'm like, that is insane. Checking those before you go to work, and getting out in that -20 degree weather. That's pretty intense.
That's dedication. And I give them credit too, because it's those guys they make a good name for trappers, right? Because a lot of times trappers can get a bad names because people don't necessarily know exactly what they do. But it's those guys out there that take it serious and take that to a professional level. They're the ones that are giving them a good name, and I give them all credit in the world because, like I said, I don't have that type of dedication.
Yeah, I agree, and it's the knowledge that goes into that, just all the different sets, the way you can set them, the snares, the leg holds, all of that. And just, I've been watching a few on the Sportsman's channel, some trapping shows, and just the way they set that and their knowledge of, where to put that and like pinch points and trails and everything. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge that goes into that.
Yeah, absolutely, especially for the guys that are successful, just being able to like look at tracks and like identify animals off that, and like you said, pinch points using your terrain. I mean, they like
Yep.
I don't have that type of knowledge level. I'll admit, I mean, if I had that type of knowledge level, I don't know how I'd ever go a season without shooting a deer.
Yeah, and I just, we were talking about the predator hunting. This is just something I got into last year, and it was almost on a fluke that I'm up at grouse camp at least 30 days. So I get up there the end of September, try to come home right around Halloween, maybe a few days into November. But every year we would be at our camp in state land, and we would have them surrounding our camp. Especially if we had a dog in heat at grouse camp, they surrounded us. So I mean, that's kind of what got me into it. And just like anything, as soon as I have an interest in something, I just start blowing money on it. So, and that was you think grouse hunting gets expensive? I mean, yeah, you have the dogs and everything, but got to see if my wife's listening to this. The amount the amount of money I have spent in the last year is insane. Yeah, she's over there she's rolling her eyes at me.
That's funny. It's funny because I just was having this conversation, a similar conversation with a guy I had on the podcast before, Upland, Arizona, big quail hunters down in Arizona. Mm-hmm. The guy just went waterfowl hunting for his first time, and I'm like, you think quail hunting's expensive? Wait till you start looking at waterfowl hunting, and predator hunting isn't far off either.
I mean, the amount, some of the the guides and the guys that are pretty serious about that, like just their boat setup, the amount of decoys and I'll tell you what, you talk about some hardcore guys, those waterfowlers, up here, I follow quite a few of them on Instagram, like Nick Cart. That guy, the amount of work they put in, 4 a.m. to get those decoys set out, before first light. I mean, that is real work. Grouse hunting, following a dog, you're walking a little bit, predator hunting, you're carrying a gun on a tripod, and then you stand there for an hour. Those waterfowl guys are hardcore.
I should pull up some pictures of my boat from the last hunt of the year. I had that thing so buried in the mud, it took us over 2 hours to get the thing dug out. It was bad.
Oh, it was man. Bad. Yeah. It was
mud flat, and I knew it was flat, and I knew it was low in water, but I really thought I'd get the mud boat through it. And I came in pretty hot, knowing I'd have to. And by the time I realized how bad it was, I tried to spin her out of there, and I just couldn't. And we just stuck.
And that's especially if it's like the only vehicle you have too.
Oh, there was I did have another buddy hunting down the way. I didn't want to ruin his hunt, so I'm like, if I don't have this thing out by 8:30 or 9 in the morning, you're gonna have to come give me a tow. Thankfully, this was at like 3:30 in the morning. We got out by like 5:30 and still set up before sunrise, so it wasn't like we still had a decent hunt. But man, I mean, November burns me out because like you spend all of October up north grouse hunting, basically. I spend most of my majority in October. I'll do a couple of duck hunts here and there, but most of my October is spent chasing grouse and woodcock. And then come November, I flip that switch and I go right to duck hunting normally to get that last month of duck. And waking up at 3 o'clock every morning and being out on the water it gets to be a grind.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like with me, getting up at grouse camp, the first week, early season, I'm pretty much by myself. But after that, I mean, I'd say this year we probably had a dozen people come through. Some stayed for a week, some stayed for a few days. But it gets to that point, like I have the first week and a half by myself, which is literally the worst part of the season. It's hot, it's sticky, there's bugs. But after that, I have, there's people coming in and out. So usually after the first week of October, I don't even pull the trigger. I don't think I shot at many birds after the first week, So, I mean, there were some times at camp where we had a day or so or an evening that there was nobody there. So my wife, I'd take her out. She'd run her dogs, but it wasn't, I did not do a lot of actual shooting myself this year.
So do you guide them? I'm assuming. I mean, if you have that many people, are you guiding, or is it just family and friends that come up that you let hunt over your dogs, and you take more of a mentorship role?
So both. Like I've mentored quite a few people over the last couple of years. I am a guide, but I don't. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I don't do it for money. I do it for the write-off. So all that expensive stuff I buy, it's a write-off for my business. So, but 99% of the time, like I give my time to people. I don't charge them. So if there's somebody that wants to come up, I had a friend of mine, Brad Marshall, from Virginia. He came up and we hunted a few days together, and it was cool. Good dude. First time I actually met him. You know, it's the Instagram thing. We had been friends on Instagram for a while and chit chatted, and he came up. I think he was up for at least a week, so we made some plans. Met up in the middle of the state, and we got some good shooting in the first day he came up. So the second day it poured, and when I say poured, like the woods were soaked. And you know, being up there 30 days, I can kind of pick and choose when I want to hunt. He came up to Michigan for a week, so he's like, "Well, let's go out." I'm like, "Man, don't make me." So we took his dogs out right by my camp, and he had. I'd have to confirm it with him because I know he was keeping track, but I say in probably an hour and a half, we moved probably 40 woodcock and 24 grouse. One of the best days we had, but I will tell you, I was soaked to the bone. But he was happy, you know, and I'm glad he got to get his dogs into that many birds. But it was to the point where his dogs, even when they weren't ranging far, you know, 40, 50 yards, they'd go on point. You'd bust 3 to 4 woodcock getting to that. And these weren't flight birds. These were actually resident birds. So there's a special spot that we hunt. I don't shoot birds out of there. It's mostly to get young dogs in there, get the young dogs, get them some experience. Or if somebody comes up, you know, that's either new to hunting or they want to get their dog out, you know, I'll put them on some birds. But it's rare I will shoot any birds out of there because it's, you know, a couple minutes from camp and, you know, you're into that many birds. It's pretty good for a young dog.
Absolutely. I mean, those are those training grounds that you just have to keep special and keep hidden.
Yep.
And only.
And that's exactly what we call it. Yep, that's exactly what we call it, the training ground. So there's probably about 4 of us that run dogs through there, but we don't kill a lot of birds out of there.
And I mean, that makes perfect sense too, because I mean, wild birds teach dogs more than pen raised birds ever will. So I mean, if you can find a little honey hole like that where you've got resident birds and you're able to, and they say a grouse's range isn't all that far. What is it, 5 acres or something like that?
5 to 10. Yep, 5 to 10 acres for the males.
So I mean, if you're not pushing them out of there and you're not shooting them out of there and you just bump them, I mean, that's continual training area.
So this spot I'm referring to, I started hunting up in this area, I would say in 2000, in this particular area, probably about 2006. It's been the same ever since. It's been like that for over 15 years and they've not cut anything. It's just the same. It's kind of a different unorthodox grouse woodcock cover, but there's always birds in it. It doesn't seem to grow. It's almost like this whole area is stunted. Nothing grows in it. So, you know, and after hunting it so many years, you can almost tell when you take a step, you're like, yep, there's going to be a bird right on the other side of that tree. And you can almost call it that they're going to be there.
That's crazy. It's almost like out of like some sort of Stephen King novel that area of woods is just like it's alive, but like it doesn't age.
Yeah, and that's how it is. And what's fortunate is, you know, I see people drive past these spots all the time and don't stop, which is nice. Because if somebody finds that, they're going to pound it every day. Right.
Especially if they're only up there for a week, right? Because now they just found some amazing cover, which, I mean, I hunted Michigan for the first time ever this past year up in the UP. I've mainly stayed to Wisconsin. So, I mean, I was hunting new area and there's maps. I mean, you have Onyx. Michigan's got good mapping software just right off their website, everything else. I mean, not all of it's 100% accurate. It gives you a starting point, and it's a lot of driving around and it's a lot of boots on the ground. especially if you've
Yep.
never been there before. Like, you're kind of like, well, you can look at a map, it only gets you so far. So, I mean, I completely understand what you're saying. Like, thankfully, people drive by that, because if they catch that, you're right, they're going to pound it, especially.
Right, right. And like you said, back to the mapping thing, like a lot of people recommend that My Hunt, that MI-Hunt app. It kind of shows you what the terrain is, the tree type, ground coverage, but a lot of it's from like 1940. So it could have been, aspen back in 1940 that was cut and logged then, but now it doesn't match up. So there is a lot of getting excited about going to that place, and then you get there and you're like, it's a gravel pit. I mean, we're talking 60, 70 years ago.
I had that happen quite a few times where I'm like, all right, like, this looks like it should be good. Like, it's got the great, like, good transition. Like, the year ages look good, 2012 and whatnot. You get back there and it's like 40-year-old pine. And it's like, did they never update this map? And of course, every time I ran into that, it wasn't just some quick little drive from the resort cabin I was staying at. I'm like, all right, we're going to go farther back in than most people probably would. And it's 20 minutes down a tiny little dirt one lane at that point through the national forest. And you get there and you look around, you're like, oh man, I wish I had a beer, because this was a complete waste of time now.
Yeah. And that's the thing. A lot of people drive by stuff and they just keep going. So when Brad came up to hunt with me this year, I had marked a couple spots from a scouting trip I did in August, and we drive by this spot, and it's super mature oak. And I pull in there, and he's like, where are we hunting? I'm like, we're going to hunt on the other side of this ridge. And I'm going to be honest, I wasn't expecting to find what we did. But when we pulled up there, we went down kind of in this valley, and like I said, it's all mature oaks. There were 8 grouse down there. So so my bacon dog goes on point, so I'm trying to get on the other side of the ridge, and Brad comes down, bird comes up and he shoots. And it looked like the bird kind of, darted off to the side, and I thought he hit it. So just to make sure, I pull I shoot a 28 and pull up, and it's got to be a 45, 50-yard shot for me. And I just pull the trigger, and sure as hell, man, that bird hit the ground. But it was still alive. I hit the wing. So my dog ended up finding it and everything. But yeah, we moved 8 grouse just out of that little bowl there. So, and again, it's like, if you pull up to the spot, you're like, there's nothing in here. But it goes to show you, and I've always told people that too, that I'm up there for so long, for a month. There would be days where I would just park in the weirdest spot and just start walking with the dog. The weekend hunters, they can't afford to do that. Like, they have to, try to get to where they know. But also by doing that, you're hunting everything else that everybody else already has. So by me, especially that time of year with the fall shuffle going on, you're going to find them in the most unorthodox spots. So I would just park, start walking, and come across birds. So I have the luxury of doing that. Not a lot of people do.
And that's where it gets difficult. Like what you were saying, like the weekend hunters, I was up there for 4 days, and that, especially when that's the first time in an area, like you're up there to hunt birds, right? So you're going to try to drive around and find those prime covers. But if they're easy to find, everybody's hunted them, and those birds are extremely pressured.
And that's the thing is, you got, and I see it too, that a lot of people will, especially out of staters, they'll go straight up 75, like Michigan's here, they'll go straight up 75 and then branch off each side like 20 or 30 miles. So that corridor down the middle of Michigan gets hammered.
Sure.
Because people don't want to start venturing out to each side. And the further north they go, there's not as much, when you get up towards the tip before you get into the UP, there's not a ton of state land up there. But you get up into the UP where you are hunting, man, you can hunt for days and days and days up there. But there is a ton of state land, and good state land up there too. Especially like Gogebic side, because you come through Gogebic, right?
I did. That's not the area I was in. I don't want to call out. I don't like try and call out
No,
specific
I wouldn't
areas.
either.
You know what I
I'm
mean?
just talking about a lake
Yep.
that's in the
Yep.
western UP.
Yeah.
So
Nope.
yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying. If I remember right, I know we're good at it. I was east of there.
Okay, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you really can't be much west of there though,
That's true.
because you're
That is
right at
true.
the border. But yeah, it's beautiful country, but that's also the country up there where you don't have a cell signal. Something does go wrong, like you need to plan that out. And a lot of people, especially that have just started out into the sport or into the outdoors, they're not prepared for what can go wrong up there. So they tend not to go back in as further as as far as they could. Excuse me. So they're hunting again off those roads and not really
Right.
getting more than a mile off those roads. So if you have the wherewithal, the knowledge to take a few more steps, you're going to hit so many more birds up there.
Oh yeah, and like you said, like just being prepared. I mean, there's a handful of things that I like when I'm up there by myself. There is no cell phone service in a lot of areas, and you are kind of on
Right.
your own. And like, a lot of these are unmaintained old fire roads, and the fire
Yep.
roads aren't bad, but the logging roads, old logging roads. I mean, a lot of them are unmaintained. I mean, you don't
Yeah,
know.
and they'll be on a map, but you go to turn down one, it's not even there anymore.
Right.
There's literally trees growing right in the middle of them. So, and that goes to show you again back to the mapping thing that you can't. What's on those maps you can't trust. So you kind of got to go find it for yourself.
And there's a lot. I mean, you have to be able to self-rescue, like especially if you get stuck. Like I bring traction boards with me. I have a come along. I have a saw. A lot of times, like if I'm going back, if I'm up there, I'll have a chainsaw on me if I need to, because there's a lot. You can't turn around always. Like if you've come into a fallen tree across your road, I have a full-size pickup truck on those roads. You can't just go, oh, I'm going to turn around. It's not possible.
I know. Yeah, especially like. And especially if you got like a 2-track that goes down and has valleys on each side, you get to the bottom of that and you're like, can I make it up the other side? So, I mean, there's been a lot of situations, and I'm not worried about myself. I've been an EMT since '98. So I mean, I have my medical, rescue knowledge, but my biggest thing is the dogs, even though I know how to fix anything. I mean, the first thing I do if something happens to the dog, I call my wife and she gives, because she works for a veterinarian. So she calms me down, kind of tells me what to do. So,
I mean, there's so many different random hazards out there. You just never know. I mean, this year
right.
I had a new one this year. Our grouse camp, we were in a slightly different area than normal. We were on the western side of the state, and we were hunting some marsh edges because it was super hot, like in the 80s for grouse camp in the middle of October, because we hit the year before it was in the single digits in snow. This year was in the 80s because that's just how it's got to work. It just can't be nice and easy. Got the puppy with you? Oh, I can't hear you. Did you pull out your earphones a little bit?
No, can you hear me now?
Oh, now I can hear you. Now I can hear you.
Okay. I don't know if I hit mute or something.
Yep.
And that's the thing. The last couple of years, especially, it seems it has been extremely hot in October. I mean, hell, I mean, even imagine, was it back in 2007? We had days in the beginning of October, it was like 90 degrees almost up here. So it can get super, super warm still. And it doesn't seem like we have the cold that we used to either.
Sure. To finish that story real quick, like talking about crazy things you run into, my Griff flushed a bear this year.
Really?
It's the first
like
time.
A full size or like a cub?
No, full size black bear. But now, I mean, that's a first. I mean, I hunt bear country. I have friends that run bear dogs that are bear guides. I'm somewhat familiar like with bear from them and everything else. And thankfully that bear just took off. It was the weekend after bear season ended. So I can't imagine how many dogs had tried to ram that bear already. So that thing saw a dog and just took off, thankfully. But
oh yeah, I'm sure they get used to that after a while. They know what's on the other end of that.
But that's the first time I looked and I'm like, there's a bear running out of that bush. calling my dog back, get over it. You're not chasing that. No way.
How did your dog react? Was it kind of surprised?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. It kind of just looked. It didn't chase. I just called her back real quick, and I hit her with a little bit of stimulation right away. Like, nope, that's not what we hunt. I figure it's a good training point right there. Like, hey, this isn't a smell you want to associate with. Like, this isn't an animal we're going to chase. I'm going to give you a quick nick. You didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but I don't want you to have any type of pleasant experience with a black bear.
No, and I agree with that. And that's a good point, that having the obedience in those dogs, especially one like yours that is like versatile, like fur. My pointers and my trial bred short hairs, they're afraid of big stuff. They don't mess with that. So I've been pretty fortunate. Even porcupines, I've had really one incident, and that was this year. My wife's female pointer, Jetta, took a stroll out of camp this year and was gone for about 11 hours. And she's old, she's 10. We don't really hunt her a ton, not as much as the other ones, but she was like, couple guys, residents up there, found her about 6 miles away with a few porcupine quills in her nose. But it's not like she was like grabbing it to grab it. She was probably, because she's super friendly. She probably went up to smell it to see if he wanted to hang out and, try to get back to her mom. But the guys that found her she said she had a couple. Yeah. Hey, tell me how to get back to my folks.
You stay here. He won't come shoot you. You can just tell me how to get back.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that was, it was a scare, because she ran out of camp, and like usually we're in this big open field. We don't have any issues. We let them out. They run around. They don't go anywhere. My wife was getting ready to put her back in her crate and turned around, and she was just gone. So we spent, and it was one of those days where it rained, it was sleeting, it snowed, it was super windy. And then even in the middle of the day, we started hearing coyotes start howling. So now we think like she's in with, getting in trouble with a coyote. So it was a pretty stressful situation. That's not gonna lie.
When those coyotes start sounding off, and like that's one thing that's like I said, we changed grouse camp for the past 2 years now, and at least once, if not twice, in the 5 to 7 days, depending on how long I go up there, like you're serenaded by wolves when you go to sleep. Like,
no kidding.
Wolves. Oh yeah, and it's like, man, like that's always in the back of my head. Like if my dog gets away, like coyotes are one thing. Coyotes are one thing. Like that's not good. Wolves are a whole different game.
And you guys don't have any season on them either, do you?
Last year it was opened up. This year it was closed due to the DNR not having proper procedures in place, so they were able to close it that way.
So I talked to a Michigan DNR guy, kind of, he's in the UP, and we kind of talked about that a little bit. And I guess he said when they opened Wisconsin's season, they really didn't have everything lined up the way, and I guess they ended up shooting too many or something, or I don't know. So he said it didn't go the way as planned.
Both the first time the Wisconsin season was opened, when they de-leased them for just that little tiny period, that's when they set the groundwork and they went over that season. And then this past year, last winter, they worked off that old framework, which was technically, I think they said outdated or something. I'm not 100% up on it. But I do know we went over quota. And I know a couple of bear guys that hunt that have bear camp north of where I've been having grouse camp. And they lost a couple dogs from wolves. And as soon as that season opened, bear camp was the furnaces were fired back up, and they were up there with all their dogs, and they hammered the pack that was taking out their dogs. Like they did.
Good.
Like they did some serious, like talking to them. He's like, I think they had the first wolf on the ground 10 minutes after the season opened.
That's not messing around.
No, they were out with a mission and they've succeeded.
Good. And that's the thing is, it seems that more people on the other end of the spectrum are trying to protect them versus, the sportsmen and the hunters trying to explain why we need to keep that population in check. But and it's always been like that. It always seems like the opposite side of us has more, more manpower and willing to do more than we are.
I think I see it, but I think that I think wolves are even a little more tricky because you have that opposition, which is just hard no, which you have that with all types of hunting. But
Right.
then, like, it seems like the loud ones for hunters are the ones that say kill them all. And like the sportsmen that want to manage the population, like we do with everything else, we manage habitat. We're conservation at first. Like I feel like when it comes to wolves, we're just all kind of slightly quiet. Like it's like this really loud shoot 'em all or this really loud don't hunt 'em all. And the conservationists that I would say make up most hunters on this issue seem awfully quiet, actually. And I don't know if it's because we don't want to get in this fight, or maybe we don't think like the fight is ours. I'm not sure.
To me personally, I think it would almost be like a lack of knowledge and knowing what your talking points are. Anybody that does not like something, they can give you a million reasons why they don't like it. On the other end of the spectrum, where the people like you said, the conservationists that want to keep that population in check, they don't know how to go about that and portray that to others of why we need to do that, because they don't have encounters with them. They don't know the stats of dog versus wolf encounters. And I'll admit too, I don't know much about it either. Talked to a couple guys in the UP that say they're a nuisance. They have a few packs around, where they live and everything. But I honestly, I wouldn't know enough to, as far as like our numbers, the pack. I don't know any of it.
And neither do I. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's a lack of education for the conservationists to be able to step up into this to make sure the season does continue to happen.
Right.
I mean, the guys that talk a lot, the guys that have the knowledge that I know are the bear hunters, are the guys that are out there dealing with wolves all day when they're guiding.
Absolutely. I mean, literally look at how many dogs they are running out there, and they're chasing those predatory animals. Like you said, your dog finds finds a bear, and it kind of just, what was that? And same with mine. Like my dogs aren't searching them out. They're not seeking them out. They're not going to get in a confrontation and try to take it down like one of those bear dogs would. Like they will go after that. My dogs don't do that, which I'm thankful for. That would be a trip.
Yeah, I'm happy. It's hard enough to keep my Griff focused if she runs into a rabbit. Like, man, like you said, like versatile dog with fur. I'm telling you, man, there's something with her head. Like if she hits a rabbit's net, it takes everything in my power to flip it back to hunting feathers, because all she wants to do is chase bunnies at that point. And I'm not out there to hunt rabbit.
And that's the thing. Like I said, with the pointers and everything, they have zero interest in them. Absolute zero interest in any fur. Which, I said, again, it's nice. I mean, they might point it. Like if it's sitting there, they'll point it. But if it takes off, they're not going to chase it. I mean, first they know better, because if I'm not flushing it, they're not allowed to look at it. So, it's they do have that kind of obedience, but they're not interested in it. Like, especially if there was like one, running away, it wouldn't try to catch it and eat it.
Sure.
Which is nice.
Yeah, it's one less thing you have to worry about. And it's not necessarily a worry. It's just like when especially like pheasant hunting on like the state lands around here, because I hunt a lot of marsh edges, because it's all put and take. So I just go to get the dog some exercise, really, because it's not something I really enjoy. I'd rather just go buy birds at that point and take a youth out and guarantee birds. But like I hunt a lot of marsh edges, like the thicker stuff other people don't want to touch, and we run into a lot of rabbits. And I get these gorgeous points. I'm like, here we go. All right, she's locked up. And there goes a rabbit. I'm like, come on. we're sloshing through this marsh, breaking ice. You lock up, and it's got to be a bunny.
Yeah. And I've been there, especially too, like, late season. A lot of times our woodcock season closes before they leave. Like we're not getting flights, until into November. And by that time, I don't shoot a lot of woodcock anyway. So, we get a dog on point. I'm hoping, it's going to be a grouse, trudge through that thick stuff at 100, 150 yards. I get up there and it's a woodcock. And I'm like, So once they leave, that's my favorite time of year.
You flush the bird and the dog's like, why didn't you shoot? The dog doesn't know. The dog's got no
You know,
idea.
and that's the thing. And a lot of people, I do joke about that, but I don't shoot a lot of them. Over a first year dog, you know, I'll shoot a few, let them handle them, but it's not something I seek out. I would rather try to find, you know, after they kind of get their first and second year, you know, knowledge of running them. After that, I'll try to go with spots with just, you know, just grouse, because it gives them a little bit more knowledge instead of pointing those birds that are, you know, 15, 20 feet in front of them. So,
Sure.
you know, I think they learn better to, you know, handle grouse when there's not woodcock around.
And that makes sense. I mean, you can put a lot more pressure on a woodcock. A dog can put a lot more pressure on a woodcock than they can a grouse, at least in my
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. And then even if they do bust it, half the time they watch where they land and they just go point it again. You know, I mean, you know, you'll get a few of those that do take off and fly, you know, 50 some yards. But, you know, I found even our resident birds, flight birds, whatever, where we're at, they do not fly that far. So, you know, especially if I have somebody new out with me or young, they miss a bird. You know, usually if I'm by myself or, you know, I do have a first year dog, if I miss it, I'm not going to keep chasing it. You know,
Sure.
I had it, you know, I had a chance, blew it or whatever, but I don't shoot a lot of them.
I love, like, that's one thing I enjoy woodcock hunting around here if I can't make it back up north, because I love chasing those wild birds in the woods. Like, that's what I enjoy. I really love the woodcock,
Right.
like
Yep.
new hunters. For people that have some experience, maybe I've taken them out on a pheasant hunt, or they've been out on a pheasant hunt, or they like understand like gun handling and stuff like that. I wouldn't take a complete amateur out into the grouse woods or the woodcock woods, because it's just a little too much going on, in my opinion.
Right. Right.
But those
You know,
woodcock,
especially with grouse too. I mean, it's for a first year, second year, you know, new hunter, it's not fun. I have found almost everybody I've taken out, when a dog points a grouse and we flush it, they're like, I'm like, why didn't you shoot it? They're like, I didn't even see it. You know, and
Right.
it's right in front of them, you know, unlike a woodcock where you can get so close to that and have it basically come right up in your face. I mean, that's more exciting for them to shoot something that they can get that close to, that it surprises them. They almost literally step on it, and then it's right in front of them. They can shoot it. So yeah, absolutely. I will definitely would rather take, you know, somebody new out, you know, and have them shoot some woodcock.
And it gives them a good idea of what happens when, like, with grouse too, because then they're trying to walk through that thicket. They're trying to manage their gun. They're trying to figure out, like,
Right.
if this bird busts, how can I even mount and swing a gun in this stuff? And then that
Right.
woodcock, it just flies different, because it's unlike that grouse that likes to stay low at 100 miles an hour and weaves through trees. That woodcock's like, okay, I'm going to go straight up and then figure out which way I want to go and then go.
Right. Yep. Yep. I agree with you. Absolutely. There's a lot better shot opportunity when they fly up instead of out.
But again, I agree though with you. Like, I'd much rather chase grouse and hunt grouse heavy habitat, and their heart. There's just something different about them, right? That's why they call them the king. I mean, they're just not. It's not an. It's. I've never once been grouse hunting and said this is an easy day.
It's rare. You know, the only people that do that, you know, is usually early season when they're shooting an entire brood when they're not flying. You know, and I've been in discussions, you know, people with that, you know, our season opens September 15th. Half the time, they're barely, I mean, yeah, they're flying, but they're not strong flyers. They're going to land in trees. And, you know, you look at people that post pictures the first couple weeks of the season, these birds are tiny. I mean, if you look close enough, you can probably see some yolks still stuck on their head. You know, you know, and people are like busting these broods up. And, you know, we got, you know, people in Michigan, you know, because we have that quiet season from April into July. You know, the first day it's open in July, these guys are like pounding these covers and, you know, breaking up broods. And it's, you know, personally, I think if you're going to train dogs on state land on wild birds, you need to wait till like at least the beginning of August, if not the beginning of September, you know, because you're not doing them any favors by pounding them every single day.
So Wisconsin's closed a little longer. Ours closes tax day, April 15th, and doesn't open again until August 1st.
Yeah, so ours is like April, right around the same time, but ours opens either July 7th or 8th, and I don't think it's enough time,
That's early.
personally.
I kind of agree with you. I mean, I'm not a biologist, though. Maybe they can prove that it's not a big deal, but that seems awfully early. I mean, even in come September, like when our season opens, which I think is like the 15th or 20th, 25th, somewhere in there, late September. I think it's later. I think it's like the 25th ish because I think it normally somewhere in there. It's either the second or third weekend in September.
Right.
I've hunted early season before, and it's hot and there's leaves everywhere, and yeah, I moved a lot of birds and multiple flushes because you're into those birds, and it's like, okay, like there wasn't even an ethical shot here. I mean, I got more foliage in my face than I do anything else.
Right. And especially now, and, I talked about this, a couple times, is since social media has been out, people, and I don't want to say everybody, but there are so many people that will do anything to get attention on social media. They'll shoot birds on the ground. They'll shoot all of that kind of stuff, shoot all these young birds, just so they can post a picture on Instagram and feel good about themselves. Like, believe me, it's not hard to shoot young birds, before they're mature. It's, that's always been kind of a touchy subject with me, and, just what people try to do, and, just they did it for the gram. So,
yeah, I have a problem. I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, I'm out there for the experience. I'm out there to watch my dog work, to be in the woods, to enjoy the entire, and then I just try to relay that experience on Instagram. Like if I get a bird, or if I don't even get a bird, it might be a scenery shot. I don't honestly shoot that many grouse in a year. I'm not that great of a shot. I'll admit it. I mean, I went years of shooting the air with my lab back then, looking at me like, you ever gonna hit one of these things?
Yeah, and I've hunted. I had a lab that I hunted with, and I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty easy to shoot grouse with a lab. So, but and that's what I started with. So even then, my first couple of years, and I'll tell you, I will admit that from day one, I struggled my first couple of years too, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. But when you spend that much time up, you tend to learn things a little quicker. And when I first started hunting grouse, back in the early 2000s, there wasn't any social media groups. We had like Michigan Sportsman that had some stuff, but they didn't have like the mapping systems. People weren't talking about where they hunted, or it was basically you found out by yourself. And I liked it. I mean, I learned a lot. And I told Aaron when I did his podcast back in the summer, when I first started hunting grouse, I would hunt in jack pines. You ever walk through jack pines? That's horrible. But there were grouse in there. And eventually I figured out they were on the edge of those pines, on a recent cut. So, everything I learned by myself. I mean, I listened to like, the Heller brothers. I don't know if you know Rick and Fritz. They're probably some of the best grouse hunters in the country. So, any knowledge they shared, him or Scott Grush that used to work for RGS, those guys, you look on any of their social media, they don't post a lot of what they do. But, when Rick and Fritz do that national hunt, they win it every year. I mean, you're talking those guys shoot like 20-some grouse in a weekend. They could hit 100 birds a year. That's normal people don't do that.
Right.
But it goes back to show you that people that do that stuff, that post pictures, or they'll take the same bird and post 15 pictures of it. The guys that are out there really doing this, they're not on Facebook bragging about it. I mean, they're not, but they're the same people though. If you ask them some questions, one-on-one, and they'll answer your questions, but they're also not posting anything on Facebook either, because anytime you get somebody that has that type of status, there's always the people below them that want to argue with them. Same with like real professional dog trainers. You don't see them on social media much, because if the trainer's telling you to do something this way, there's going to be that guy that trained one dog versus 2,000 that says, oh, you're doing it wrong. And why would they want to waste their time trying to defend what they've built, in the amount of dogs they've trained? So, I've said that from day one. You do not take anything you see on social media. I don't take it seriously.
No, and I agree. I mean, it's always a highlight reel. I mean, you don't see the hours and hours. Like for me, especially, like I'll post some duck hunting pictures, right? Yeah, you don't see the hours I spent in the blind with nothing. Like the birds never worked. I wasn't in the right spot. I got stuck in the mud. Actually,
right. And even I did that. Even this year, if you look any pictures I posted, I think I didn't even start pulling my gun out till actually, I think it was like October 2nd or 4th. So I was up there already for a week before I even started doing much, setting camp up, running the young dogs, letting them bump birds and everything. But I think after the first couple days I was up there, I never posted another picture of a bird again. It's just, I don't know. I'm not in it for the attention. I just like to get up there and, get some. We had quite a few new people at camp come through this year, like my buddy Brad. My good friend of mine, Jeremy, brought his kid up. His kid's just turned 16. I gave the kid his first shotgun. One of the first ones I ever bought with my own money. He still uses it. So, getting people out like that, not carrying a gun, I'll carry a camera.
Sure.
And eventually, and I was at that when I first started too. Like I was all about trying to kill as many as I could. And, I almost kind of regret that, just trying to, but, I thought I had something to prove. And, and everybody that still has that mindset, they're all eventually going to get the same mindset that you get when you've been doing this for a while. And it's not about killing them anymore. It's, I like watching. I don't get to actually see my dogs work because they range a little bit further. But I'll tell you, when that beeper goes off and walking up to a pointer with a perfectly poker straight tail, and that does it for me. I could end the hunt right there. As soon as I, flush the bird, I could turn around and go on to the next one.
I think you're right. Everybody goes through that phase. I mean, I went through that when I first started because I didn't grow up in a hunting family. I took on waterfowl hunting. That's where I started. And I mean, at first it was, all right, I got my first bird. That's cool. Now I got some birds to land and decoys. Man, I'm starting and you start to figure it out.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's like, well, now I need limits. Now you start chasing limits. And it's like, you don't have a good hunt unless you shoot a limit. And now like a limit's like the last thing on my mind. And it's like, I want to watch like my dog make a good retrieve. I want to watch the person I took out get his first duck.
That's where it's at. Yep, that's where it's at for me. Let me take somebody out that is new to this or has never killed the grouse. And I tell you, my good friend of mine, Nancy Beth, she's a short hair breeder. I met her probably, 6-7 years ago. She came up to camp, I want to say it was 2016. Was the first time she came with some more friends of ours. She had never shot a grouse. I think she had, killed a few woodcock. She kills her first grouse over my pointer Waylon. And I'll tell you what, that to this day was probably one of the most memorable events I have ever gone through in this hunting thing. And then the next day I had another person that killed their first bird over my Harmony dog. So that I'll tell you, that is where it's at for me. That feeling is awesome. That's what I like.
I agree. I mean, I took some people out last year, I think it was. They never hunted over a bird dog before. So like they hunted over.
That kind of scares me. That scares me though a little bit.
Agreed. We did it at a pheasant farm. It was super controlled environment, right? And we did a lot of talking ahead of time, and pheasant farm birds hold pretty well. I'm the one going to flush it. I'm the one that's going to get shot, not my dog, which I'm okay with. If someone's getting shot, it's going to be me, not my dog, because I don't want to know my mindset after someone shoots my dog. Like that terrifies me. But like watching them, like their awe of watching this dog work the field, like they're just like just amazement of that, and like taking someone out woodcock hunting for the first time, and how they like a dog can just glide through those woods, and they're so thick. Like we're stumbling, we can't even move, and the dog's running half speed to full speed and just like right through it. And it's like those things, like I just love watching people's eyes light up when they first experience something like that. Or
and I've hunted over a lot of dogs. My cousins had short hairs when I was growing up. That's kind of where I got started in this. My dad had a short hair, but she was dead before I was born. But going from people like weekend hunters watching those dogs and seeing how good they were, and then a couple of years later, 10 years later, when I start training my own field trialing, the just everything that goes into a well-trained, even if it's not even a national champion dog, but just a champion dog. But when you get up to the nationals, the level of those dogs, I cannot even explain that. What a veteran grouse dog that's done that year in and year out, like you said, it is just amazing to see that. But it's such a night and day difference. Like I grew up with those weekend dogs, seeing how good they were and thinking that's what a dog does, but then seeing those next couple levels that those dogs can achieve, it is absolutely mind-blowing. And that's why I like judging field trials. Like I have judged hundreds of dogs in the last, I think I've been judging, I don't know, probably 10 years now. And the amount of knowledge that you can get by judging a dog, sitting on a four-wheeler, watching them work, a lot of times I think I know more about their dogs than those handlers do. Like, I've judged these dogs from our, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana. I've judged these dogs so many times. I know when they're about to go on point, or I know when they're following a track, or, whatever they're doing. Like, it's so cool to be able to read everybody else's dog, not just your own.
That's cool. That's cool. And I haven't hunted behind a dog like at that level. I never have. Like nobody I know. Like I worked with an HRC for a while when I first got my lab. I never got into the testing side of it, but I worked with a bunch of the guys there. And I'm a full fan. I'm a huge fan of working with clubs. Like you're an animal trainer, especially without experience. The friendships and the level of experience you can lean on, I'm a huge fan of.
Oh, absolutely. Those HRC dogs are insane. One of the firemen I used to work with had several grand national whatever retrievers, Cody, and he had another one. And I can appreciate any good bird dog in any venue or any format, but watching them do those blind retrieves and hand signals at 2 and some 100 yards. Once my dog gets past 100 yards and I give it a command, he's like this, and then he's, but as soon as they whistle, that dog turns around and sits. I mean, it is amazing. No matter what venue, what direction you take with the dog, the level that people can take those dogs to, they always impress me. Any format I'm impressed with.
I agree, especially when you get to those kind of levels, right? When you're getting to the guys that are serious about it and like watching that dog come up and like just looking like you just know, right? Especially even if you're a weekend trainer, you're starting to get to train your first dog and you start to know how much time it takes and consistency, like just the true consistency it takes to train a dog to that level. I mean, it's so much respect and appreciation there because there is so much time invested into that dog.
And that's the thing is, I talk a lot of people, especially my clients that have dogs, we talk about that bonding, that people have with a pet, but trying to explain something to somebody that, has not spent hundreds of hours, traveled across the country with a bird dog, just the places those dogs take you and the things you get to do, the people you get to meet, they're not always the best people. I mean, I'm sure I know a lot of people don't like me, which I always giggle about that. It's that bond that you develop. You can't explain it to anybody. And like I said, I lost Waylon in November, and it was kind of sudden. Like he literally was fine. The end of September, he stopped eating, and he went downhill for a year. And like I told Aaron that dog was, and I've had other champion dogs my buddy Scott gave me a national champion pointer. So I know what the caliber of those dogs, and I know what they can do. I've trained them, I've trialed them, but that Whalen dog was the first dog I bought as a puppy. It trained everything myself, start to finish, and put a championship on him. So that dog, that dog changed me, and when he passed, I mean, that was literally, I mean, I lost my dad in 2007. So that was hard. I don't want to say this was as hard, but it's different. Just spending that much time, like I said, we went to as far south as Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee. We spent some time in some southern states, Illinois, Indiana, went to the nationals in Iowa and Nebraska. It's cool that I had a dog that could compete at that level, at the nationals. Not that I did any good there, but at least we qualified for it, And I always told people if he had a different trainer, that dog would have been a national champion. But, I took 3 years off of running him when I left the fire department. So, for 3 years he didn't get trialed. We just hunted. So I think if I would have spent the same amount of time as I initially did with him, I think he could have been more competitive up at that higher level.
And that bond that's just created for those hours and hours of training and the travel.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to explain unless it's hard to explain losing a bird dog or any type of dog where you put that much time into, right?
Right.
I mean, it's hard to explain.
And he, like I said, again, so many people shot their first bird over that dog, and it's rough, man. Even now, it is still so hard. I told you yesterday when I was sitting in my chair just looking at that picture all day that Dave Veldman took of him and gave me that portrait. Every time I'm in the living room, there's that big picture of him up there. You can't help but look at it. So he's definitely well represented in the house. In my office, there's a whole wall of trophies and plaques and ribbons and everything else from that dog. So yeah, he was a good one.
And they teach us a lot along the way. I mean, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. It really is.
And that was the first. So I had short hairs. How many short hairs did we have before we got Whalen? 4, 5, 4? Ivy, Danner, Hawkeye, 4. Yeah. So 4, we had 4 short hairs. And then Morgan was the one that I really got started in with pointers, but I got her at 6. So when she died, that's what I went to Kansas to pick Whalen up. And that dog is what got me into those pointers, man. I'm telling you that, they always had such a misconception that they were hard-headed, they were stupid, they run big, they run away, they don't listen. That is everything that I just mentioned with him was the total opposite. Back in the day, yeah, there probably were quite a few pointers that were just rogue. But he wasn't disobedient. We went out to North Dakota 2 years ago. He was ranging 500-600 yards out on the prairies, and then we drive back through the UP and we stopped at our grouse camp and goes right back down to 80-100 yards. So I mean, the intelligence of those dogs to be able to do that is pretty impressive.
I agree. Be able to have a dog that can recognize the terrain and know when I need to range big, but then can reel it. That's huge. And it's and I've heard this before. I don't know if I've ever said it. I mean, it's easy to bring a dog back in. It's really hard to give a dog enough confidence to go out and range.
You can't push a rope, right? You can pull a rope. You can't push a rope. And that's the thing is, everybody's always like, oh, you don't want a dog from field trial lines, or you don't want this, or you don't want that. Give me that dog that wants to be out there, and let me adjust him to how I can be. People are so afraid to lose sight of their dog, and especially in the grouse woods, people are saying they're hunting their grouse dogs at 20, 30 yards. That you're literally watching the dog go on point, and you're not even taking another step before that bird's coming up. But I'm not saying to have them out at 200 yards either. That's, and everybody does things different. If the 200-yard dog works for you, fine. 30-yard dog works for you, fine. But I have enough confidence in my dogs of their ability that they're going to be honest when they're out of sight from me.
Sure.
Now, some of the short hairs I've had, at times you'd watch them like look around, and they'd go in and try to grab it, but it's those pointers aren't anything like people say they are. They tell a lot of people say they're not good for a first dog. Man, it's such the opposite with those dogs. That's why I have. How many do we have now? 7 pointers? 6, 7, 6. I don't know. See, and that's the thing. I don't even know how many dogs we own anymore. And we got another one coming in a couple months, or maybe into the summer.
That's awesome. I'll
tell you. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's another thing. Like when you're up at grouse camp for that month, I mean, you can put some serious boots on the ground because you're able to cycle dogs in and out.
Yep.
Like for me, like if I keep my dog pretty well conditioned. She's 10, so she's getting older, but it's hard to hunt a single dog for 5 days straight.
I have more dog power than I have as far as my back can handle.
Sure.
I think this year anywhere from 8 to the day Jetta ran away. I think I walked 16 miles that day. So, 8 to 16 miles a day. I mean, and that's not even hunting a full day. So if I want to rotate dogs, a lot of these are retired now.
Sure.
We have a few that we don't hunt because they are older. But even with the active ones we have, you can hunt sun up to sundown for 2 months straight and not wear those dogs out. And having, and that goes back to the field trial, breeding. They're a smaller, finer boned, more athletic dog than some of these big, 70, 80 pound dog, that can't handle not only the terrain and the mileage, they can't handle the heat.
Right.
And that's another reason why even people are like, well, I'm just a weekend hunter. I don't need a field trial dog. If anybody needs a field trial bred dog, it is the weekend hunter because they can go more miles. They can, even the first couple weeks, even the first month of our season, it's hot. Those dogs can handle the heat. Those big 80, 70 pound dogs, they're not going to be putting in as much time as a smaller, finer boned, athletic pointer or short hair, whatever or Brittany, whatever. The
right.
Smaller dogs are going to be able to give you more per season than a bigger dog.
Absolutely. I mean, and conditioning plays a part in that too, right? I mean, you can't just let your dog, I've seen it before, especially back when I was in the lab world. Like you got a bunch of guys that bring their labs out that have been couch potatoes all summer long. They haven't ran
right.
on it, and it's hot. I'm like, you guys, I hope you know how to. I hope you know how to read your dog for heat exhaustion because you're barking up a tree that can be pretty darn dangerous.
Every year that happens, and even the smaller dogs, people do that with them too. But I learned this analogy from my training mentor. Even professional football players in the NFL, linemen, they're in good shape, right? I mean,
right.
Look at what they have to do. But you take that lineman and a wide receiver and tell them to go run a marathon, who's going to win?
Right.
The wide receiver, because they have less mass, they're not, and we go over this constantly. If you look at some of those bigger dogs, the way they run versus a well-gated smaller dog, that bigger dog's going to be rougher on the ground. It's got more impact every time it hits the ground. You're impacting those joints, and we can go into like the whole lactic acid buildup in the muscles and just what they require. It's impossible to get a bigger dog to do what those smaller dogs can do.
And
even if they're both conditioned. I'm not saying those bigger dogs are out of shape, but it's a law of physics. I mean, it's impossible to be able to do what, and there's exceptions. I'm sure there's an exception for everything.
Right. I'm sure there's a 90 pound short hair out there that can do 24 miles a day. I'm sure there is, probably somewhere, right? But that's not the rule.
Probably like in December when it's cold, and there's always going to be those exceptions. But for those people that are looking for their first dogs, the best thing, and even what I did is my first pointing dog was a field trial washout. And the only reason he was washed out is the people that bought him neutered him didn't keep him, gave him back to the trainer, if he wasn't neutered, that trainer would have trialed him because he had the tools. That was my first dog that I actually put an amateur championship on. But I can't say I didn't train him because I got him at 3. But he was one of those that if he wasn't neutered, he would have been on the trial circuit with a pro trainer.
Sure.
So it's get those field trial washouts because most of the time, I would probably say 90% of the time, a short hair or a pointer they get rid of them is because they don't run big enough. And by big enough is like we go back to that thing where you can't push them out, but you can bring them back in. So if they're not running big enough for a field trial, that's perfect for a grouse hunt, right? So
Sure, exactly.
you got that closer range. You got one that's already trained, that's holding birds, pointing birds, and probably retrieving and backing. So when I bought my first started dog, the only thing he didn't do reliably was back. But natural retriever, bird work was good, and that's what I started with. So I learned everything that I needed to know up to the point of breaking that dog, handling and everything. He was ready to go. So I bought him and literally took him up north. Couple days later, and I was grouse hunting, and it was, he ran away the first couple times because he didn't listen to me. But after we kind of got to know each other, and he got used to me handling him, I didn't have to do any of that hard stuff.
Right.
So that's a great piece of advice for somebody just starting out is, see those trial washouts.
And also don't like what you said, just because the dog's a washout doesn't mean it's a bad dog. I mean,
absolutely not.
I mean, some of them don't have the temperament to take that much pressure on the national stage. Some of them don't, like you said,
right.
don't range far enough. Things like,
yep.
But all of those things are for high level competition. Like you don't need, for the standard hunter, even if they're putting in weeks every year, this dog is going to be more than what they would probably need ever, compared to your regular weekend dog.
So, and that's what I've always told people too. Like, my buddy Scott Townsend that owns Crosswind Kennels, honest to God, we've probably had 13 dogs from him. And the thing is when he gets rid or moves a dog down the road, it has nothing to do with it not being a good dog. It's not, he's looking for a national champion, but right. I can almost guarantee every single one of those dogs he washes out and sells to somebody, it will be a brag dog for them. Like it is a damn good dog. It's not national champion caliber. So it's not going to be winning nationals, but you're going to be cleaning up in the grouse woods. I'm trying to think of who I can name that's had those dogs that have been very successful in them, and a lot of people are like, oh, those are trial dogs. You can't do this. You can't do this with them. There's a girl, Lindsay Chartel is she in Wisconsin? She bands with one of Scott's short hairs. She bands woodcocks with it. There's guys that run NAVDA with a few of those. There's guys, are they the best duck hunting dogs? Probably not, because they do have that thinner hair.
Sure.
They're not designed for that. But people are like, oh, those are just trial dogs. Wrong, because I'll show you one that bans woodcock every single year. It goes back in just to how what you're going to do with it. Make your plan and start executing your training plan.
And if you're looking, I mean, if I'm looking, and I might be going down this road because my Griff doesn't get along with other dogs. So me getting a puppy and starting from scratch, it can't happen while she's still around. And depending on when her time comes, there's a good chance I'm not going to be able to just run out, grab a puppy, and get it trained before hunting season. So,
right.
I mean, for me, there's a really good chance, as much as I love dog training, that my next dog probably will be a started dog, maybe a field trial washout, or one that down that road, just for the fact that I can get that dog, I can spend a couple weeks with it, and it's not even basic obedience, but there's always obedience, refreshing, but that brings
absolutely. I mean, you have to that dog has to be used to you handling it. Absolutely. Right. Yeah.
And that's a great way to build that bond, is just going over your basic obedience.
Yep.
Just consistent.
Once you have that leash in the end of that leash in your hand connected to that dog, that's when that starts. That's when they know you give them a command or, e-collar, whatever. You give them a command, that's when they learn they're going to need to listen to you now instead of their previous owner.
Right.
Yep. I agree with you. So, and then too, if you are having that dog that has issues with other dogs, once she passes on, then you can start building up your dog power.
Exactly. Because then you take that immediate need, and I can get right back out into the woods, and I have a dog, and then that dog shouldn't be alone. That dog grew up with a kennel of dogs. I probably should bring a puppy into the mix.
Yep. And if you need help convincing your wife of how to get multiple dogs, I'll just put her in touch with my wife, and next thing you know, you'll have 15 dogs and nowhere to sit on the couch. Yeah, that's why I'm in the kitchen. There's literally every spot is taken. Here, I'll give you like a little panoramic of these. Mind the paint. We haven't finished painting in here, but yeah.
Oh, did we lose you? I think the walk around the house kind of might have done us in a little bit here. Oh, but it looks like we lost you on that quick walkabout, but you gave us a little tour. We saw all your dogs. We saw the entire pack, and we didn't look at your paint, I promise.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like what is it? The cobbler's kid goes without shoes. Yeah, the contractor doesn't get anything done at his own house.
Priorities, man. You gotta go
I know.
money, and then so you can take that month off for grouse hunting.
Yeah, it's like 40 days about. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I did after I went up for 30. I got home and I was supposed to start a job, so I kind of made an excuse and took another 10 days off after I got home.
Perfect.
I had to rake some leaves and stuff. So are you gonna make it back to Michigan anytime soon? Like Lower Peninsula?
I don't have Lower on the books, but that can always change. I haven't announced this officially anywhere, but I can now. Starting Monday, I actually took a new role in my company, which is 100% remote. So that's going to give me a little more leeway on making trips a little bit longer. Not that I have more time off, but I can go take my camper and stay somewhere for 2 weeks as long as I have internet. I can work my Monday through Friday and get out in the afternoons when they're still enough daylight on those weekends.
Well, I'll tell you this, and I can't tell you what city, but at our grouse camp, we have 5G.
There we go.
So there's no excuse about not having internet.
Good to know. But I am actually heading back to the UP. We're moving grouse camp again, and we're going to try the UP this year coming up. So
east, west side, or what are you thinking?
Same exact place I was at. Some friends of mine bought a resort up there, so we're just we've been staying up at their place, throwing them some money, keeping them supporting our friends where we can, and they got a small resort in the UP, and they're living their dream up there. So
when we get off of this, you'll have to tell me the name of the resort, because like I said, I like to support the smaller businesses. So if I do make it up there, cool.
Well, I'll give you this little bit here if you want to thank anyone or shout out your social medias or whatever.
The only person I have to thank is that crazy wife of mine for letting me have all these dogs and taking all that time off. So it's funny, you hear a lot, and most of the time, like, guys joke about their wives, like, oh yeah, the ball and chain won't let me go up or whatever. When I go up north, my wife tells me if I don't come home with deer, grouse, or woodcock, don't bother coming home. So if I want to stay longer, I'm like, nope, didn't shoot anything yet. So, it's all about, compromise. So if she lets you have 10 dogs, which most of them are hers, they're not all mine anyway, give back to that, reciprocate that, and, just enjoy it. So it's nice to be able to to have that many dogs sometimes. It's nice to have that many in October, but the other 11 months a year, it's not always the best. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, like I said, everybody's outlook's going to change on this after you've, done it for, 10, 15 years. You start out with that. You want to kill as many as you can. And, by the end of, that cycle, you start the new cycle of just watch my dog and, take more people out. And I'll tell you what, that is probably the best part of this is getting the new people into it. Finding those mentors or people to mentor, and make it fun for them. Like, don't take them on 15-mile marches and, marginal cover and, take them to where there's woodcock. I'm going to tell you, new people don't know the difference. Take them where there is woodcock. There's more action. You have more opportunities with them. It's easier for them to shoot. It's easier for the dog. So, if you're going to mentor some people, just remember we all started somewhere. So, just go easy on them and make it as pleasurable as you can.
Agreed, 100%. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're young or old. I mentor a lot of after college kids, actually, like that 24 to 30-year-olds that want to get into hunting. I've mentored youth. I mean, they're all participants of what we're trying to, which is conservation. I mean, without hunters, we don't have lands get sold off if they're not used. I mean, it's a big thing. I mean, so the more voices we have, the better it is. And that mentorship goes a long way in keeping people invested in what we enjoy doing.
Right. And especially in these states where there are, Michigan, we've been very fortunate here. We have a decent population of grouse and woodcock. We, most of the time, are now starting to actively manage our forests, unlike states like Ohio, Indiana, where they don't do anything. Between you, Michigan, where you're at, and then you with Wisconsin and Minnesota, we're pretty lucky here with what we have and the opportunities with the amount of state land we have around here. So, help other people enjoy it and, just, go easy on them when they're learning, just like we all did in the beginning.
Exactly. And if we can cut that learning curve down a little bit so they continue to get out there, I mean, that's a good thing.
And again, don't hand them everything on a silver platter either. Don't tell them everything all at once. Kind of go over covers one day, what weather does with the birds. There's all different aspects of this that we all need to learn. And I will say, when my dad died in 2007, we never got to grouse hunt together really, because I didn't really have as many dogs then. I only had 2, but he had cancer for a few years before that, so he was the one that got me into the hunting. So everything I did, I learned by myself or listening to the few that I trusted on the internet, on like those forums, and I would take every piece of little information that they would drop, and I'd remember that. People like Scott Grush and the Hellers and Frank Gillijanek and a lot of the guys, I kill a few birds a year, probably above average, but when those guys say something, I still listen to them. I'm not going to argue with them. Like those guys, and I've said this many times, those guys are not grouse hunters. Those guys are grouse killers. They kill more grouse in probably 2 weeks than a lot of people will kill their entire life. I mean, sure. If you know what those guys are capable of, they can be dangerous, man. So they're those guys, when they talk, listen to what they have to say. So, don't be argumentative with everybody, and just any information you can get, log it in and just try to use it some way.
And you always can learn, right? Even when you think you got it figured out, you might
absolutely
something, and it's gonna be like, I never thought of that before.
And even now, like I think I started this in 2001, so about 20 years. Every time I go out, I learn something different, and it's not always just about birds. It's about dog stuff, or find a mentor that not only teach you about grouse hunting, but I had literally one of the best bird dog trainers in the country teach me everything I know. So I lucked out, and again, I've told people that if you want help with your bird dog, find a local trainer, go start cleaning their kennels. That is where I started at shit bottom there, man, like cleaning dog kennels, and worked my way up. And, the amount of knowledge that I've, gained in those, I think I started hanging out down with Scott like 2006. The amount of knowledge of his 35 some years, I don't think there's anything that man has not taught me that he knows or tried to teach me. I might not absorb everything at once,
Sure.
But finding those people that do this for a living, that guy has won more national championships than anybody. I think he's won 12 or 13 nationals now, and runnered up, I would say, in probably 24 nationals. So he's doing something right, and I'll tell you, listening to those pro trainers and grouse hunters that do this a lot, that is the best piece of advice I can give you.
I agree. You gotta sit back and listen when there's experience, and you have to be able to recognize what is true experience and not just someone spouting off, talking like they know what they're doing.
Right. And again, like a lot of new people, and we've talked about this on social media, a lot of new people don't know how to sort through all that BS on social media. There's guys, and I'm going to tell you this, there are people out there that look like they are the best hunters in the world or the best dog trainers in the world and brag about that. When it comes to meeting up with them in person and doing some of that in person, it's total opposite. So don't believe everything you see on social media, because it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz and the City of Oz. It's not real.
Sure. And like we said before, it's a highlight reel. I mean, you don't see the bad, you don't see the struggles or anything like that. It's always the 100%. It's always the highs. It's never the lows.
Yeah, and even like when you first asked me to do this, I mean, we've been planning to do this for, it's got to be a few months now, right? That we just, one thing after another. But you wanted to talk about predator hunting. I can tell you how to spend money. I can tell you how much I've spent. I can tell you what to buy, but I mean, I can call them in, up at grouse camp that, we had a few people come up that coyote hunted with us. I can call them in. I will call you coyotes in all day or all night, but I'm not near that level most of these people are. I mean, that is a brand new sport to me, but there's a lot of cool stuff that comes with that.
Agreed.
And one of these days we'll get back into that. I'll kill a few with those two thermals and everything else, and then we'll go into that.
It's a fun little thing to chase in the off season too, right? I mean,
right. In Michigan, it's open all year round. Like you can hunt all year round, sun up till the next sun up. I mean, the season does not close. So, hunt them at night. And yeah, so, I'll tell you, there's nothing like sitting out in the middle of thousands of acres of, national forest in pitch black. You have no idea what is around you, and you look through those thermals and you can see some coyotes around you and they start lighting up. That will send chills down your spine, man. That is the first time I did that last year, that was when I got hooked. And I tell you, it's been interesting since. So
it's not easy. It's a hard challenge. I mean, it's hunting
absolutely.
Predator. I mean, it's different. We're not hunting prey. We're hunting a predator. Nope. They have good eyesight. They have good hearing. They have a great sense of smell.
Their nose is like none other. We've been out hunting where I've had deer walk 20, 30 feet away from me. That same stand, I've had yotes look at me at 150 yards and bust, turn around and go the other way. So they're an extremely intelligent animal. But again, that's just one of those things that, when we're up at grouse camp, after we're done, we can go hunt those at night. And, it's just something to add to the fun while we're up there. But it is, there's nothing like doing that in the middle of the night, looking through one of those thermals and seeing, coyotes or deer 700 yards away.
Yeah, thermal changes things. I've got that little thermal scanner, and it's fun. I mean, it's just fun to play with. Like, just even like around the house, I was playing with it. Like,
so I can laugh about this, and my wife's sitting in the living room right next to me. That's how I justified buying that first thermal. I have two now. It was winter time, and with 10 dogs and there's a lot of snow, it's hard to pick up poop. So, and that like, I'll admit, man, she does that. It's awesome. She does a lot of the poop picking up. So I'd stand at the door with my thermal scanner. I'm like, oh, there's a pile over there, because you can see it glowing in the snow. So that's how I sold it to her, that, it's easier to find poop. My mom didn't raise.
I went around my house looking for cold. Like, we should have insulation here. We should have insulation here.
Yep. Yeah, it works. Yeah. I tell you, my mom didn't raise no dummy. I'm a pretty good salesman, so that's how I sold that. But I don't think she's not gone out with me at night. I don't think so. We're gonna have to change that here soon. So
yeah, it's a good time. It's definitely a good time. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Brian. It's been great. It's just been a fun episode. So
yeah, I had a good time. I like kind of like just like the unscripted, conversation. That's kind of a different take on it, and it's kind of like two friends sitting around a campfire.
That's exactly what my show's about and what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like we never met, like if we're just hung out for the first time around a fire, like.
Yeah, we did, literally. Yeah. Well, hopefully you can make it to a real fire this October, or maybe next year or the year after.
Yeah,
so,
we'll talk about that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hang out for a minute. All my listeners, as always, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't for you guys. I really appreciate it. And again, until next time, keep chasing that experience.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_and_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_and_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in Northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. Shout out to Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com